Thank you, Yago. It's really a pleasure to be here to report to you the area. I have been single-mindedly pursued the question whether barberry play any role in Eastern Africa in stem rust situation. This is, I want to first, from the very beginning, I want to acknowledge a number of people contribute one way or another to this effort. And particularly my group, there's Pablo Oliveira, Matt Rose, Les Sable, and our colleague ARS from Fort Detrick, Doug Luster, and Yago has been participating in the rust survey in Eastern Africa, and the Ethiopia teams from Dr. Katani, and Anderi, and Dr. Dave Hudson. And also in the case of Kenya, Ruth Vaniera has been closely involved in the first part of my talk. So I'm going to decide last minute going to add a little bit more to this stem rust story. I'm going to add a little bit about my structural story too. And so unfortunately didn't make to the abstract. So I'm going to go through the first part first. And I want to stress that we are using extremely old methodologies address very, very old questions. And with our predecessors solved those type of questions, which they should have, unfortunately didn't complete the inquiry in many cases. I begin with why we bother with the barberry questions. And when we first saw the Yue Jin 99 in late 1990s, early 2000, when I got hit with the pathogen, one thing struck me most was the broad, complex variants we have not seen before. Particular to wheat, I know, and many of you know that have a long history of stem rust resistance breeding, North America spring wheat and the summit wheat. It's since 1950s, tireless effort, but complex resistance into those wheat, but suddenly almost most of them become susceptible. The sudden appearance of such variants really is mind-boggling. And very soon we saw complex number of new races popping out all the time. This is just part of it. I didn't list all. And again, why is that? We worked with stem rust for many, many years. This type of variation is so closely related, it's not have many precedents. So that's the reason behind we ask the question, whether barberry involved in the whole thing. I begin with the chart. Many of you familiar with this chart. It's lower left, lower right corner is the asexual state, which is the state most people know and most people work with. A large chunk of the life cycle, most people don't know, don't see. Part of the reason is in large part of the wheat production in North America, in Europe, the barberries got eradicated, as Radhika told you earlier. But in other parts, we really either we don't know or rarely occurring. So that's Africa, in fact, is part of the region that this question in the past was asked and never been resolved. And I want to bring a little bit about the asexual cycle. Yes, the fungus is highly capable of reproducing massively in the asexual states. And so many other cereal rusts, so many other fungal pathogens. But why? Some people always wonder why there's a sexual state. And this has been not just for rust, for many eukaryotes, people have been wondering why bother to have a sexual cycle when you have a so efficient way to reproduce. And that's a question to evolutionary biologists bothered them for many, many years. In fact, we know that in Stemmer's case, the sexual cycle indeed have one the most powerful means to generate new variations. The variation not just variance, but variations with adaptness and potential variations for future stresses that may never have not encountered. That's part of the reason why many of the organisms maintain sexual cycle no matter how efficient, successful they can be with asexual reproduction. So stem rust and yellow rust in some degree fit this same thing. This is a life cycle between stem rust and yellow rust nearly identical. Okay, that's why in the right corner I put both rust original states, except if you make teliospore chop the top head little bit, that becomes strap rust. And that if you change barberry into selectrum, become leaf rust life cycle. Change barberry into graminis, you become crown rust cycle. So that all the rusts have this so-called macrocyclic heterogeneous state. And some more prominent than other in the life cycle or disease cycle. So back to Africa. Africa in the literature have several species barberry, in fact. Well, I list a very brief key there. It's stem yellow, you call it Puccinia. That's the species north of the equator. Then if you have a dark purple stem, you have leaf threads entire. That means you don't have spines around leaf. You're supposed to be called holstii. And if you have threaded leaf, you call it grantii. So for those, I list briefly those characters about those three species. But this turned out to be troublesome for some taxonomists. So particularly the authority, when he developed the flora of Eastern Africa, he put everything together called holstii. Okay? So we so-called, today I'm going to talk is holstii sensuruta, so include everything. That's good for us. We don't have to bother to record what species might be probably easier to work with. But ultimately, I think this is a question needs to be worked on, just like we approach that the resources Yago is developing. And if you look at this particular species, in fact, it's start from Oman around that northern part, went to Yemen, then crossed in the east, northern of Somalia, right there, and going into highland of Eastern Africa. In Kenya, in Ethiopia, we don't have this is a map based on herbarium records in the public available herbarium record. Then in Kenya has a, let's see, Kenya went into Kenya, and Ethiopia, and southern limits might be in Malawi. So those flagged area are the ones we did our survey and study. In the North Java region in Ethiopia, and in the central highland, I believe, called the Central Rift Valley and Mount Kenya area in Kenya. And besides this particular species, if you look at distribution from the record in the herbarium collection, as well as from the survey we found, you cannot find it below 2,400 meters below the above sea level. So very high elevation, seems to have very elevation sensitive species. And we know that there's a number of Berberis species have this kind of habit. And we began survey in 2007. In picture here is Ruth Vanera from Kenya there. Left side, I show you is 2000 survey in Mount Narak, as you can see. Oh, this is not clear. Here's the wheat field there, and almost in the heading stage. Around the road, as you can see, those barberry are growing. So barberry very in close proximity with wheat. Then went further into Kenya, into Mount Kenya. This is small peak of Mount Kenya right there. And these are the downward slope of wheat fields in Mount Kenya. And massive wheat production there. I believe it's about 30,000 hectares wheat, as I weekly remember the number. And in those fields, most of the fields in the range between 7,000 feet to about 10,000 feet. And about 3,000 meters in the top edge of those fields. And barberries, here, if you go into the woods along in the forest area, or you go into those woods between fields, those ditches, you can see barberry, plentiful barberry. And here you can see that that barberry grow along the road in patches. And here, particularly this here, almost pure stage of barberry. So barberry easy to find in Kenya once you get into the right environment. Yeah, Ethiopia's picture seems a bit different. This is my trip pictures, but additional exploration done by Dr. Katani and Deli and others. And this is this picture is in the North Shore. And barberry occur in places where you have a rock outcrops, where you can't grow anything. And next to those rock crops, you have wheat, you have fields, you have fields. Well, you can see that those smoke green fields. There's barley, wheat, not too far from it. And I believe in the upper corner picture we took in South Tigray region. What we do in addition to survey, we also test this particular species whether it's susceptible or not. And CDL has tradition of testing barberries. This species was included some 30-some years ago, and now to be susceptible to P. graminis. And we also test in 2008 our own and confirmed that that's the case. And at the same time, we also test for susceptibility to yellow rust. And yellow wheat strap rust in particular. The picture showing there, pignule and the initial state, in fact, is yellow rust. And so far we know about the species that's present in highland of Eastern Africa, and frequently in close proximity with cereal production. And also we know that it's susceptible to Puccinia graminis and Puccinia tritici. And what we do not know is whether it's functional as an alternate host for P. graminis. And for that matter, P. stratiformis in Eastern Africa. So that's a very single-minded question, very simple question, and we're going after it for a number of years. It's turned out to be not that easy. and we numerous times we lost samples, could not keep samples alive. Eventually, we had a couple of lucky breaks. We got a couple of good sampling. Sitting there, Iago joined me in a couple of barber research, and center picture shows you the issue. Pustules, the right side shows you how we inoculate. That's where you put the issue on top of like radical. So you put on top of a screen, spores will shower out to plants, and you can get tons of spores land on it. If you pick the right host, there's no way to escape that amount. If you have the right rust out to it, and that's a method that we have been fairly reliable. I want to give you a quick summary what we have found so far. List here about, I think it's about 15, 16 isolates we derived from ECA, the number from top from 5 various numbers given there. That's number of isolates, individual isolates. Our top cross is the stem rust differentials. What we have is some of relative aberrant races, some of relative aberrant. But a couple of races assemble to the population like JRC QC. We have in the asexual population, we have JRC SC here. Another race assembled to the field population is our PTC, we have RPTF, in fact, we have filled as RPTC. 5 minutes. But I'm going to give a quick conclusion about that. Is what we found so far is Puccinia graminis complete sexual cycle in Eastern Africa. And we have, in fact, I said Puccinia graminis, but not just wheat, but because we also pulled the right stem rust and old stem rust from it. And Berberis holstii is functional as an alternate host for wheat stem rust. And working in Eastern Highland, Eastern Africa can't help but think about strap rust too. And what we learned from working with strap rust, we know that strap rust has a very unique habit. The unique Amosera rust is the teliospores do not require dormancy. They can germinate when they produced. So that alone lead us thinking of the barberry. Eastern Africa barberry have a relatively unique growth habit, is produce new leaves very often. So you have susceptible tissues, you have the teliospore germinate all the time. As long as you have good environment, you are going to have a sexual cycle. That's our hypothesis. So based on this, this is a chart showing the bar is in Mount Narok. It's the bar shows the rainfall, moisture, and the line shows the temperature. It's rains, very much rains within strap rust. So we asked based on the unique biology of teliospores, unique biology of barberry, and the unique environment, we propose a hypothesis that highland environment is conducive for sexual cycle of strap rust to occur. And I'm going to take you out of Africa back to North America to test this particular hypothesis. This is showing you this various color there, shows you range of barberry native species in North America. They are mostly in the western part of the country, in high mountains, around the Rocky Mountain range. What we have is species listed in the left, and the red color we know is susceptible to stem rust. I'm particularly interested in one species here in center orange there called Berberis funduleri, because that's the only true barber species in the West we know susceptible to both stem rust and yellow rust. So we did quite a couple of years study of this unique environment. One uniqueness about this barberry is have a very indeterminate growth. You can pop new shoots all growing season. And you have this new shoots go through the rhizome, as you can see that center picture there, and you can produce shoots readily by those. And the barberry is forming patch-like thing here, and also barberry you can you can have various states of plants, but the plants in the rosette state barely coming out from ground to be most susceptible. We observed this from late May all the way to late August, and from various states of infections. And we don't believe that single infections, multiple infections, in fact, occurring there. And based on the data we have here, and we also have the teleal host. I want to show you that highly associated with here is Pescoparum smithii on the left. That is wheatgrass. And in center is ryegrass called Elamus glaucus. Those are very closely associated with barberry. Then we have other grasses also known to be teleal host of Straprus, Elamus canadensis, Hordium marinum, and Triticum cylindrica. Occasionally you can see in those, those areas. And the summary, to summarize that we have teleal, unique biology of teleal states, and unique biology of the growth habit of the barberry, and we also have the unique highland environment. In fact, many highland environments very similar. What we produce is have a sexual cycle. And more importantly, there are apparently multiple sexual cycles occurring within a season. I think that's very likely event in the case of Straprus. With that, I think I would summarize, propose that might not happen in North America alone. If you look at the Kenya environment, it's much better than the Colorado environment for that purpose. So the question is, it's unique or it's very common in highland? My personal feelings might be very common in highland. The highland environment, probably many other places. So I'm going to escape a couple slides here. I'm going to, okay, come back this. I'm going to dedicate this talk to my friend and colleague, Gordon Caesar, who was associate director for this group before, and who has been helping me keep me from eating by lions in the mountains, rolling down the Rocky Mountains. He has been very helpful, and together we spent quite a few nights in the mountains.